Good morning. This video is going to show you how to, draw something very basic. Draw a line. And of course, use some of the um, tools and modes that go along with drawing a line, some of the tools that you might run across. And first thing we want to do though, however, is we want to change a couple of things. Which I've already changed it in my file, and the file that I have open is my practice file, so that's the file that you need to have open. If you need to pause until it comes open, just go ahead and hit pause, and then start me back up as soon as your file comes open. But I want to click on the application menu first. That's this big A here. Go down to drawing utilities, and I'm just going to hover over drawing utilities, and then I'm going to mouse up to units and click. Now, once I'm in units, I'm going to go to this box here. It says length and type. Now, when you first start a file, it will say decimal. But I'm going to click on it, or you're going to click on yours, and you're going to change it to architectural. I've already been into mine and have already changed to that. Now, once you change it, you don't have to do it again on that file. So once you change that to architectural, it will always be there. And I'm going to click OK. Next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have a couple of things on, or several things on down here in my status bar at the bottom. So let me zoom into that. Okay. All right, so here I am, my status bar. This one's open usually automatically. Most of this stuff is default. Okay, but as far as having some things turned on, I turn my grids on. I like to use grids. You don't have to use grids, but I use grids. Kind of just helps me see things a little better. I do not use the grid snap mode, so I have that turned off. You notice it is off. It's not illuminated in blue. Next one is dynamic input, and that's a very interesting control there, and I'll show you how to use that. But if you do not have dynamic input in your status bar, just go way over here to the customization menu, click on it, open it up, and go to the top, and you will see dynamic input. Click it to make sure to put a check mark next to it, and then dynamic input mode will be in your status bar. And usually once you click it and put it in there, it's automatically on, but just double check. Now, I don't use any of these, the ortho mode, which snaps me at 90-degree angles, and I don't use this one, which is, I forget, what is it, polar tracking. I don't use that one often. Sometimes I do when I get into more detailed type things. But right now you can leave it off. You definitely want object snap tracking on. That allows you to snap to certain points of geometry, or that allows you, gives you a guidance to where you can pick up certain points of geometry. And this one allows you to actually snap to the geometry, object snap. Okay, so object snap tracking and object snap should be on. And if you click the little arrow next to the object snap, and this is where you can turn on certain snap modes. I always use endpoint, midpoint. A lot of times I use perpendicular. I'm just going to leave that on, and I also use parent intersection. Some of these other ones I will use later as I go through my drawing to get more detailed and more accurate placements of my line endpoints and things like that. So if you have these on, you're good. If you want to turn some of these other ones off, if they're already on, go right ahead and do so. Okay, next one is show annotations, and that's usually on by default, and that means to show all of your dimensions when you place them on the screen. Any notes that you place on the screen makes all that visible. Next is your scale, and what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make this in a 1/4 inch scale. So you click on the arrow next to that, and You just kind of scan down till you find 1/4 of an inch, and then you click on that, and it changes it into 1/4 inch scale. Workspace, we're just going to use the current workspace, which is the architectural or annotation workspace or something like that. But basically it defaults to whatever it is. Drafting the annotation, that's what it is. These don't worry about. This one's always on, don't worry about that one. And everything else is good to go. So again, looking across that bar there, see the ones that I have illuminated in blue, and make sure you have those also illuminated in blue. I'm going to zoom back out. Okay. Now another thing you'll want to do is kind of zoom into your drawing a little bit, and I'll show you why here in just 1 second as soon as I start the line here. So I'm going to click on the line so we can draw a line. I'm going to come into the screen. Now, as you see down there next to my cursor, that that cross, that big plus mark looking thing, that's what I'll refer to as the cursor. It says specify first point. And as you see, I'm not very far away from the 0 axis right here. This is my 0 axis. Everything starts at 0 right there. And just think of a graph like you would draw or make in math class, where you have that 0 intersection, then you put those plots in different places. The same thing, same plotting system. But it says to specify first point, and you see I'm not very far away from that 0 axis, and if you look in that first box where it's highlighted in blue, it says 99 feet, 4 3/16 inches. Okay, so basically I'm zoomed really far out from what I'm drawing in this particular scale. So, you don't have to, but it always works good to zoom in and kind of make things a little bit more scale appropriate, I guess. Okay, so I'm zoomed in, and now my cursor, which is in about the same place as it was before, is at 8 feet, or now 7 feet, 7 3/16 inches. Okay, now what that allows you to do, actually first, before I go into that, you're probably wondering how I'm moving my screen around and stuff like that, how I'm panning and zooming and things of that nature. To zoom into your drawing field, or the drawing area, all you have to do is spin the mouse wheel. You spin it out or backwards, and that makes you're zooming out. Spin it forwards and you're zooming in. Now if I want to pan, meaning that I want to move the screen around like this, basically move everything on the screen around, I use the same wheel, but I press down on the wheel, and then I move my mouse. I don't press down and roll, okay? Do not press down and roll on the mouse wheel. Press down and move your whole mouse, and then you get the screen panning, such as this. Right. Now going back to my line and specify first point, it's asking me where I want to put the first point. Now I could just click anywhere here and draw, and there's me a line. No big deal. Okay. But the dynamic input allows you much more accuracy in doing so. So what I'll do is undo that, go back to my line tool. All right, and usually I don't necessarily always set a first point, but here I will just show you how this works. Okay, so it says specify first point. So in that first box, all I have to do is type in the exact position that I would like the first point of my line to be drawn. And let's see, right now it's at 46. I'm just going to say 50. So I'm going to put it at 50 feet. Oops, that's 5 feet. 50 feet. Okay. Now I want to get to the next box, okay, because we're talking about XY coordinates here. That first box is 50 feet. That is my X coordinate. Now I want to place my Y coordinate. So I hit the tab button. If you look on your keyboard, on the left-hand side there is a tab button. So I click on the tab button, and it takes me to the next box while saving what I put in the first box. And I'm going to also type 50 feet in that one. Okay, and that's going to get me in that specific position. Click enter. Okay, so that start point of my line, where that line is stuck to right now, is basically 50 feet by 50 feet from the 0 axis point down at the bottom left. Now I'm getting to drawing lengths of line, and you know, I can stretch it out and try to measure the length that I want, but it can be pretty difficult to do that and get it exactly the measurement that you want. You know, you could try that and kind of see how it works, and you see it's just very difficult to get an accurate placement of the other endpoint. So what I want to do is I'm just going to type in the endpoint. Let's say I want it to be 100 feet. Okay, so there we go. We're at 100 feet. We have a 100-foot long line. And when I type that in, I want to kind of make sure that I'm in that 90-degree position, okay, before I type that in. Now you'll see here in a moment that snap tracking will sort of activate, kind of help me do that. But at first, when you first start drawing, it's not going to help you as much. Once it learns what you are trying to do, then it will kind of help you in that respect. Another thing you can do is, you know, in order to lock it and make sure, like if I want to make this line here and I want to be sure that I lock it in at 90 degrees, then I could go down here and turn on ortho mode. Okay, and that way I'm locked in at 90 degrees. I could type 100 to make this next line 100 feet, and then click enter. And now that line is perfect 90 degrees at 100 feet. Now, I can actually turn off ortho mode. That way I can make other than 90-degree angles if I want to. But as you see, it's going to start, the computer's going to see what I'm trying to do, and it's going to automatically pick that up for me on the object snap tracking. So what I'll do first is, if I want to make this a perfect square, I can go down here and pick up the geometry of this other point here, because I want this line to stretch out and be even with that endpoint of that line. I want it to be the same length. Now, of course, I could just type in 100 feet. But a lot of times as you get going and start making complicated drawings, you're not going to remember how long you drew that first line. So, you know, you'll have to rely on the computer to help you out. So I'm going to go down here and pick up the endpoint geometry, and that's why I have my object snaps on. Okay, I'm going to pick it up. I'm not going to click on it. I'm just going to pick it up. So I'll mouse down here till I see that blue square. Blue square, that's a green square. But that represents that I have locked on to the endpoint of that line. Now, I have actually activated that endpoint, and now my snap tracking is going to take over. And you see the dotted green line is telling me that, okay, you're even with that line. Okay. Now, to get me a good 90-degree position, it sort of helps, it kind of locks me in. I mean, not like it would if I were using the polar tracking, but it does sort of lock in at 90 degrees. And I can, when I get there, click, and then there's my line. So, and actually I'm looking at it and I'm not quite sure that's straight. I think I bumped it just a little bit. So let me redo that. Okay, line, endpoint. Go down here, pick up the endpoint geometry. And actually it's helping me more now with it, because it's giving me a green line to tell me I'm over here, that I'm level at 90 degrees. Okay, and I meet that same point there. And now I have that perfect 90-degree line, or line from 90 degrees. And then the bottom line here, you can just pull it down until it reaches that end point, and make sure that it is the end point. See, right now it says it's perpendicular. If you look in the little message box there, it says I'm at perpendicular, which means I'm not quite at the end point. I might have to zoom in to get a little closer so I can get it to the endpoint. Okay, so I'll do that, and you see how I was going to be clicking in and attaching the line right there. Okay, so the square represents the endpoint. That little L-shaped thing there represents perpendicular. Okay, so here's the endpoint. Okay, there's perpendicular, endpoint. So click to get the endpoint. And now I have a perfect square.